Dr. Elias Verne stepped carefully across the soft, glowing ground of Lyria 7. Each footfall sent tiny ripples of light radiating outward, making the crystalline plant sway gently as though greeting him. The sky above was a swirl of pale lavender and soft orange clouds, streaked with faint green auroras. Elias paused for a moment, taking a deep breath of the alien air, which smelled faintly sweet, like honey mixed with ozone. His mission was simple in explanation but complicated in reality. Study the life forms here, document them, and send the findings back to Earth. But the deeper he walked into the crystal forest, the more he felt the sense that Lyria 7 was alive in ways he could not yet understand. The first few hours passed quietly. Elias knelt beside a cluster of bioluminescent moss, gently brushing his fingers across its soft tendrils. He took careful samples and noted their patterns, but his attention was divided. Something about this planet felt different, not just alive, but aware. He shook off the thought, attributing it to exhaustion from the long journey. He had left Earth months ago, crossing light years in the spacecraft Astronova, and had only recently landed. Isolation in a strange world had a way of making the mind imaginative. He stood up and looked around. The forest seemed endless, a sea of shimmering colors that bent light in strange ways. Crystals jutted from the ground like towers, some taller than the trees, and their surfaces reflected the strange sky. The entire area hummed softly, a vibration beneath his feet almost like a heartbeat. Elia's pulse quickened, and he realized he was smiling without understanding why. Then he saw her. At first, she was just a silhouette standing still among the crystal pillars. Her skin glowed faintly, silver and soft, reflecting the light of the forest in subtle waves. She was taller than an average human, graceful, with elongated limbs that moved like flowing water. Her hair floated gently around her face as if underwater, catching the light of the planet's auroras. Elias froze, unsure whether to step forward or retreat. His mind raced with questions. Was she sentient? Was she dangerous? Did she even speak a language he could understand? She tilted her head slightly, studying him with large, luminous eyes that seemed to see everything. They were a soft amber color, warm but intense, as if reading not just his appearance but his thoughts. Elias felt a shiver of awe. He raised his hand slowly in a universal gesture of peace, and she mirrored him. No words were exchanged, yet a sense of understanding passed between them. For a moment, Elias thought she might vanish, like a creature of light fading into the forest. But she stayed. She stepped closer, each movement slow and deliberate, her bare feet making no sound on the glowing ground. Elias noticed the subtle patterns across her skin, almost like living tattoos, shifting colors and shapes as she moved. The patterns pulsed gently, synchronized with the hum of the planet itself. He wanted to speak but found his voice caught in his throat. Words felt inadequate here. Instead, he offered a small smile, and she responded with a gesture of her own. She lifted one hand, then tapped her belly softly, her eyes never leaving his. Elia's heart skipped a beat. The gesture was simple, yet it carried a weight he could not place. She spoke a single word in a voice that was soft, melodic, and clear, even though he did not understand her language. Yours. Elias blinked. The sound lingered in his mind, echoing through his thoughts. It was not a claim or a command, not an order or a threat. It was something else, something intimate, tender, and profoundly mysterious. He stepped closer, his curiosity overcoming any lingering caution. Yours, he asked softly, testing the sound, trying to match her tone. She tilted her head slightly, a small smile forming on her lips, as if acknowledging that he had understood the essence of her word, even if not the language. He realized then that this encounter was not ordinary. This being, this woman, was trying to communicate with him in a way that went beyond words. He felt drawn to her presence, not just as a scientist fascinated by an alien species, but as a human, sensing a connection that was immediate and undeniable. The forest around them seemed to respond. The crystals pulsed in gentle waves, the soft hum rising in pitch as if curious or welcoming. Elias crouched slightly, raising his hands in a gesture of openness. She mirrored him again, and then she stepped closer still, slowly closing the gap between them. The air around her shimmered faintly, warm and alive, and Elias felt a strange calm wash over him, as though some invisible weight had been lifted. Minutes passed in silence, yet neither moved away. He observed her carefully. She was humanoid, but her physiology was clearly adapted to the alien environment. Her skin seemed to absorb the light and energy around her, storing it and reflecting it in subtle shifts of color. Her eyes held intelligence, but also emotion, curiosity, and something Elias could not name, something deeply human in its recognition. He raised his portable scanner, a device meant to analyze life forms, but she did not shy away. Instead, she reached out a hand, gently touching his device with delicate fingers. The scanner beeped softly, unable to make sense of her energy patterns. Elias lowered it, realizing that she did not need such instruments to understand the world. She was part of it in a way he could barely comprehend. "You understand?" he asked cautiously. She nodded and then tapped her belly again, repeating the motion from earlier. The word yours seemed even more important this time, layered with meaning he could feel in his chest but not define with his mind. Elias exhaled slowly. He had prepared for first contact scenarios, for hostile aliens or incomprehensible threats. He had never prepared for this. This was intimacy, yes, but also wonder and curiosity, and something that hinted at a bond beyond biology. He wondered briefly if she was aware of what she had said, if she even realized how weighty her word was in human terms. Then, as though reading his thoughts, she extended her hand toward him fully, palm open. Elias hesitated but then slowly took her hand. The contact sent a spark of energy up his arm, not painful, not alarming, but vibrant, alive, a sensation unlike anything he had ever felt. The forest around them seemed to shift, the hum growing more musical, more layered, as if it were rejoicing at the connection. He took a step closer, feeling the warmth of her presence radiate. The crystals and plants continued to pulse with life, and Elias noticed that some of the smaller creatures, tiny luminescent insects, gathered near them, floating in patterns that almost seemed to dance. It was as though the entire ecosystem had recognized this bond, this moment, and was participating in it silently. Elara, he had decided on the name in his mind, though he did not yet know if it was correct, leaned closer. Her eyes searched his, not with judgment or fear, but with recognition. Elias felt the echo of her thoughts, gentle and welcoming, brushing against his mind like a soft wind. She did not speak words, but her presence communicated volumes. He realized then that he had been given a gift, a glimpse into something rare, something profoundly different from anything humanity had known. He was aware of his own excitement, tempered by caution. He did not know what the future held, or what this connection might mean for himself, for humanity, or for this mysterious being. But he felt certain of one thing. This moment was important, and he was no longer just a visitor in this alien world. He was part of something larger, something alive. Time seemed to stretch. The sun, if it could be called that, shifted across the sky in slow arcs, casting light that danced on the crystals. Elias and Elara remained where they were, hands almost touching, eyes locked. He tried to think of a question, a proper greeting, a way to communicate properly, but no words seemed sufficient. Then he simply said, I want to understand." Elara's smile widened and she tapped her belly once more softly, almost shyly this time. Elias understood. This was an invitation, a sign of trust. She was sharing something with him, something beyond immediate comprehension, and asking him to join her in the journey. He nodded slowly, feeling a mix of anticipation and wonder. I'm yours, he whispered, not as a claim, but as an acknowledgement, as a promise to learn, to observe, and to share in whatever lay ahead. She tilted her head, and the light in her eyes brightened, almost like laughter, soft and musical. The forest seemed to sigh in relief, the crystals, glow spreading wider, bathing them in a gentle, radiant light. Elias knew then that this was only the beginning. Whatever connection had been established, whatever life or intelligence she carried within, it would change him, and perhaps humanity, forever. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the forest floor, Elias felt a sense of calm determination. He did not know what the days ahead would bring. He did not know if he could fully understand Elara or the life that might come from this bond. But he knew one thing: he would try. And for the first time since arriving on Lyria 7, he felt that he was exactly where he was meant to be. EYS passed on Lyria 7, each one folding into the next with a soft, gentle rhythm. Doctor. Elias Verne had settled into a routine among the glowing crystal forests, and though his scientific instruments remained with him, he found himself relying less on them and more on observation and instinct. The planet had a rhythm of its own, and Elara seemed to move in perfect harmony with it. She walked beside him through the luminous foliage, her steps silent, yet somehow guiding him toward places of wonder he could never have predicted. Elias had grown accustomed to her gestures, to the way she tilted her head or tapped her belly to communicate. Words were scarce between them, but understanding seemed effortless. He learned to notice the subtle shifts in her patterns, the way her skin shimmered slightly when she was curious, or how the air around her seemed warmer when she was content. And always there was that word, spoken once or twice in the softest tone: yours. It had become less mysterious now, more a signal of trust, of connection. He had begun keeping a journal, not just of the flora and fauna of Lyria 7, but of his interactions with Elara. He described the way the crystal trees swayed as if acknowledging her presence, or how small luminous insects flocked to her, forming patterns like floating ribbons in the air. These observations, though scientific in appearance, carried a personal weight. Elias felt that everything here was alive in a conscious way, and that Elara was its interpreter. One morning, the forest seemed different. The glow of the crystals was brighter, pulsing gently in a rhythm that matched the soft hum under his feet. Elara approached him from a distance, her hand outstretched, beckoning him. He followed without hesitation. She led him to a shallow pool, its surface smooth like glass, reflecting the swirling colors of the sky. She knelt by the water, touching it lightly with her fingers. Ripples spread outward, forming intricate patterns that seemed almost intentional. Elias knelt beside her, fascinated. "Is it a signal?" he asked, more to himself than to her. She nodded, tapping her belly once before placing her hand over the rippling water. The patterns shifted, forming shapes that seemed familiar and strange at the same time, like the outlines of creatures he had never seen. Elias leaned closer, trying to make sense of it. "Are you showing me?" he whispered. Her amber eyes met his, warm and patient. She nodded again, and for a moment the word yours echoed in his mind, carrying a deeper meaning. It was no longer just a label, but a connection, a shared understanding. She was inviting him into her world, into something profoundly intimate and unique. As he watched, he began to notice subtle changes in the environment. The moss along the edge of the pool glowed more vividly, and tiny crystal formations near the water's surface shifted slightly, aligning in patterns that mirrored the shapes in the ripples. Elias realized that the planet itself responded to her presence, to her gestures and emotions. It was as if Lyria 7 recognized her as part of itself, and now it was recognizing him through her. Over the next few days, Elias and Elara explored deeper into the crystal forest. He marveled at how she moved through the terrain, navigating with grace and ease. She seemed to know instinctively where the most unusual flora and fauna would be, guiding him to plants that changed color when touched, or insects that glowed brighter in response to movement. Elias recorded everything, but he found that words alone could not capture the beauty and subtle intelligence of this world. He began to experiment with his own gestures, trying to communicate more than just basic curiosity. He would mimic her movements, tap his hand to his chest to signal thought or emotion, and watch as she responded in kind. Slowly, a shared language emerged, not of words, but of gestures, glances, and subtle movements. It was a language of connection, one that seemed to flow naturally between them, unspoken yet fully understood. One evening, as the twin moons rose above the horizon, casting silver light across the forest, Elara led him to a small clearing. The ground was covered in crystals that shone like tiny stars, and the air was filled with a soft, melodic hum. She knelt in the center and tapped her belly once, her eyes meeting his. Elias felt a shiver of anticipation. He knelt beside her, unsure of what to expect. She placed her hands on either side of her belly and closed her eyes, her breathing slow and deliberate. Elias watched, fascinated, as the glow around her intensified, pulsing in sync with her breath. He felt a subtle warmth in his chest, a sense of energy flowing between them that he could not explain. It was not physical in the way humans understood touch or heat. It was something deeper, something alive and aware. For the first time, he realized that her species, way of reproducing, was unlike anything humanity had ever known. It was not simply biological. It involved connection, trust, and a shared exchange of energy and understanding. The life growing inside her, if it could even be called that, was a product of this bond, a living reflection of her connection to him and potentially to humanity. Elias reached out gently, placing his hand near hers, not touching but close enough to feel the subtle vibrations of energy. She opened her eyes and met his gaze, a soft smile playing on her lips. In that moment he understood the depth of her word yours. It was not possession, it was recognition, responsibility, partnership. He stayed by her side as night fell, the forest glowing softly under the moon's light. He noticed how the smaller creatures of Lyria 7 responded to their presence, gathering nearby and moving in patterns that seemed almost ceremonial. The crystals pulsed in gentle waves, bathing them in soothing light. Elias felt a sense of calm and wonder unlike anything he had experienced on Earth. As the days continued, Elias learned more about Elara's world. He observed her interactions with the planet, noticing that she could influence the growth of plants and the behavior of creatures with subtle movements and energy. She seemed to nurture the environment, and in return, it nurtured her. The connection was symbiotic, delicate, and beautiful. Elias found himself sharing thoughts and feelings in ways he had never imagined. He spoke softly to her about Earth, about humanity, about the excitement and fear that came with exploration. She listened, tilting her head and emitting melodic tones that seemed to respond directly to his emotions. He realized that the bond they shared was not limited to simple communication. It was a mutual exchange of understanding, empathy, and awareness. One afternoon, as the sun cast long shadows across the forest floor, Elara led him to a narrow canyon filled with hanging crystals that reflected light like 1,000 tiny mirrors. She gestured for him to follow, moving gracefully along the edge of the canyon. Elias stepped carefully, mesmerized by the shimmering reflections and the soft hum that seemed to rise from the crystals themselves. At the center of the canyon, she stopped and tapped her belly once more, her eyes locking onto his. Elias knelt beside her, feeling the familiar pulse of energy that seemed to radiate from her. He realized that the life inside her was responding to him as well, subtly mirroring his own emotions. The connection was no longer one-sided. It was shared, dynamic, and alive. He spoke softly, almost to himself. "I will learn, I will understand." She responded with a nod, her eyes bright and warm. For the first time, Elias felt the full weight of the journey ahead. He was not just an observer on this alien world. He was part of a bond that could bridge species, a connection that could redefine humanity's place in the universe. The forest around them seemed to sense his realization. Crystals pulsed brighter, the hum rising in a harmonious crescendo, and the tiny creatures danced through the air in intricate patterns. Elias watched in awe, understanding that this moment was more than personal. It was a sign of potential, of harmony between species, of the beauty that could emerge when trust and empathy were the foundation of connection. Night fell and the twin moons bathed the canyon in silver light. Elias and Elara remained close, hands near but not touching, sharing a quiet understanding. He knew that the days ahead would bring more discoveries, more lessons, and more moments of wonder. The word yours had taken on a new depth. It was no longer a mystery. It was an invitation, a promise, and a responsibility. As he drifted to sleep beside the glowing canyon, Elias felt a sense of anticipation for the days to come. He did not know what the future held, but he knew that whatever life awaited inside Elara, whatever mysteries Lyria 7 had yet to reveal, he would face them together. And for the first time in his life, he felt truly connected to another being, to a planet, and to the possibility of something greater than himself. Elias woke to the soft glow of Lyria 7 twin moons, their silver light spilling across the crystal forest. The air smelled faintly sweet, carrying the subtle scent of the luminous plants that surrounded them. He sat up slowly, careful not to disturb Elara, who still rested peacefully beside him. The last few days had been a revelation, and he felt a mixture of awe and curiosity that he could not put into words. He had come to the planet to study life, but now he realized that life itself was teaching him. As the sun began to rise over the horizon, casting soft lavender and gold hues across the forest, Elara stirred. She opened her eyes, and their gaze met. Elias felt a familiar warmth spread through him, a silent acknowledgement that the bond between them had grown stronger. Without words, she gestured for him to follow. Today, she seemed more purposeful, moving with a rhythm that suggested she wanted to show him something important. They walked in silence, the soft glow of the ground lighting their path. Elias noticed that the forest seemed unusually responsive today. Crystals pulsed gently underfoot, and the small creatures of the forest moved in synchronized patterns around them. He realized that Elara's presence influenced not just the immediate environment, but perhaps the ecosystem of the planet itself. She was deeply connected to Lyria 7, and through her, he was beginning to feel that connection too. Eventually, they reached a clearing where a cluster of towering crystal spires surrounded a small pool of water. The air here vibrated with a gentle energy, almost like a heartbeat. Elara knelt beside the pool, her fingers brushing the water's surface. Elias watched as ripples formed intricate patterns, reflecting the colors of the crystals above. It was mesmerizing, and he could not help but lean closer, studying the movement. She tapped her belly once, her eyes meeting his. Elias felt the word yours echo in his mind again, but now it carried a new weight. He realized that she was not just showing him her world. She was sharing a part of herself, a part that was intimately connected to the life growing within her. The energy he felt was not just from the environment, it was a living bond, a symbiosis that transcended species. Elias knelt beside her, placing his hand near hers without touching. He could feel a subtle vibration, a pulse that seemed to respond to his presence. It was as if the life inside her was aware of him, recognizing him as part of the connection. He whispered softly, "I want to understand everything." She nodded gently, and a warm glow radiated from her skin, illuminating the pool and the surrounding crystals. For hours, he observed her movements and the way the forest responded. Each gesture seemed deliberate, yet effortless, like a dance that had been performed for centuries. He realized that Elara could influence the growth of plants and the behavior of creatures through subtle shifts in her energy. The Lyria 7 ecosystem was not merely alive, it was intelligent, responsive, and in harmony with her. As the day progressed, Elias began to experiment with his own gestures, attempting to communicate not just curiosity, but empathy and understanding. He mimicked her movements, tapping his hand to his chest or spreading his fingers like she did. Slowly, the forest responded to him as well, subtle vibrations and shifts in light acknowledging his attempts. It was exhilarating, and he felt a deep sense of belonging he had never known on Earth. In the afternoon, Elara led him to a narrow gorge, where crystals jutted from the ground like towers of light. The air was warmer here, humming with energy that seemed to vibrate through Elia's bones. She knelt on the edge and tapped her belly twice, her eyes locking onto his. Elias knelt beside her, feeling the familiar pulse of energy radiating outward. This time, the bond felt stronger, more defined, as if the life inside her was reaching out to him directly. He observed carefully, noticing subtle changes in the water nearby. Tiny organisms within it moved toward him, forming patterns that mirrored his hand gestures. Elias realized that Elara's species had a unique way of sharing intelligence, not just with each other, but with other beings. The life inside her was not isolated. It was part of a larger network, a living consciousness that could interact with humans if they approached with care and respect. Elias reached out gently, placing his hand on the edge of the pool. He felt a warm current of energy, faint but undeniable, moving through him. Elara's eyes softened, and she emitted a melodic tone that resonated in his chest. He closed his eyes, letting the sound and energy flow through him. For the first time, he understood that this bond was not only emotional, it was intellectual, a sharing of awareness and understanding that transcended words. Hours passed in quiet observation. Elias noticed how the smallest creatures of the forest seemed drawn to the energy of the life inside Elara. Tiny, luminous insects formed patterns that reflected his own thoughts, as if the planet itself was learning to recognize him. He began to realize that the symbiosis he was witnessing was more profound than he had imagined. It was not simply life nurturing life. It was consciousness connecting with consciousness, a shared intelligence that could shape the world around them. In the evening, as the light of the twin moons bathed the gorge in silver, Elara moved closer. She placed her hand near his, letting their energy touch in a subtle, vibrating rhythm. Elias felt a deep sense of calm, as if the universe itself had paused to observe them. The word yours no longer felt like a mystery or a puzzle. It was a declaration of trust, of shared responsibility, and of a journey they would undertake together. He spoke softly, I feel it, the connection. I feel you, the planet, and something more. She nodded, her eyes reflecting the moon's light. Elias realized that the life growing inside her was not just a being, it was a bridge, a living link between her species and his. He wondered what it might mean for humanity to witness such a bond, to experience connection not through conquest, but through empathy and understanding. The night deepened, and the gorge became a sanctuary of soft light and gentle hums. Elias stayed close to Elara, observing her interaction with the environment. He noticed how she could coax plants to grow in specific shapes, or how the small creatures responded to her subtle movements. It was clear that her species had mastered a form of communication with their world that humans could only begin to comprehend. Elias felt a surge of hope. If humans could learn even a fraction of this understanding, they could coexist with alien worlds rather than exploit them. The life inside Elara represented more than reproduction. It symbolized potential, connection, and a new way of thinking about existence. Humanity could grow not by conquering, but by understanding and nurturing relationships, both with other species and with their environment. As the first light of dawn touched the crystals, Elara tapped her belly once more, then turned her gaze to Elias. He knelt beside her, feeling the familiar pulse of energy. He realized that the journey they had begun together was only starting. There would be challenges, questions, and discoveries, but he felt ready. The bond they shared was strong, and it was alive in ways he had never imagined. Elias took a deep breath, feeling the cool morning air mix with the warmth of the energy flowing between them. He spoke softly, "I will stay, I will learn, I will understand." Elara's smile widened and she touched his hand lightly, a gesture of affirmation and encouragement. The forest around them pulsed gently, as if acknowledging his words, welcoming him into the fold of life on Lyria 7. The days that followed were filled with learning and wonder. Elias discovered that Elara could influence not just the physical world, but subtle currents of thought and emotion within him. She guided him to notice patterns he had never seen, to feel rhythms he had never sensed. Each interaction deepened his understanding of the symbiotic intelligence she carried and of the life growing inside her. One afternoon he asked quietly, "Is it aware of me?" She looked at him, eyes gentle, and tapped her belly. Then she extended her hand slightly, as if inviting him to share in the sensation. Elias felt a faint pulse, a delicate vibration that resonated with his own emotions. The life inside her was not separate from him. It was responding to his presence, learning and connecting in ways that words could not describe. He realized that this connection could change everything he knew about life, consciousness, and humanity's place in the universe. The symbiosis he observed was a model of cooperation, empathy, and intelligence, far beyond what humans had achieved. And through Elara, he was learning not just about her species, but about himself, and about the potential for humans to grow in understanding and compassion. As the sun set, painting the forest in shades of gold and lavender, Elias and Elara sat beside the pool. He placed his hand near hers, feeling the gentle pulse of life and energy. He no longer felt like an observer or a visitor. He was part of something larger, a bond that extended beyond species, beyond words, and beyond time. And for the first time, he truly understood the depth of her word. It was not possession. It was trust. It was connection. It was the beginning of a journey that would forever change him, and perhaps, one day, all of humanity. The mornings on Lyria 7 had taken on a rhythm that Elias had grown to cherish. The soft glow of the planet's twin moons lingered in the sky even as the sun rose, painting the crystal forest in colors he had no words for. Each day he awoke beside Elara, feeling the quiet pulse of life around her, the gentle hum that seemed to connect them all, the forest, the creatures, and the life she carried. But as the days passed, a thought had begun to weigh on him. He had arrived on Lyria 7 as a scientist, an observer with instruments, notes, and questions. He had not expected to form a bond with a being whose very existence challenged everything he had understood about life. Now every pulse of energy from Elara, every movement of the creatures responding to her, reminded him that his role here was no longer passive. He was part of something greater, and with that realization came questions that had no simple answers. One morning, as soft lavender light filtered through the crystal trees, Elias followed Elara deeper into the forest than he had ever gone. The ground beneath them shimmered, alive with energy, and the creatures of Lyria 7 moved in intricate patterns around them. It felt almost ceremonial, as if the planet itself recognized that today would be different. They reached a plateau overlooking a vast valley, where the forest stretched endlessly, interwoven with rivers of glowing light. Elara knelt at the edge, tapping her belly softly and looking at him. Elias understood immediately. The moment was significant. He knelt beside her, feeling the familiar pulse of energy radiating from her and the life within. The bond they shared seemed to thrum more strongly here, amplified by the openness of the valley and the flow of the planet's energy. He hesitated, a question forming in his mind that he had been avoiding. "Elara, if we return to Earth, what happens then?" he asked quietly. She tilted her head, her eyes gentle, as if she had anticipated the question. She placed a hand near his, and he felt the pulse of life answering him directly. The connection carried understanding. She was aware of the implications of their bond, of the choices that lay ahead. Elias looked out over the valley, taking a deep breath. He had always known that exploration came with risk, that discovery required courage. But this was different. This was not about charts or specimens or knowledge alone. This was about responsibility. The life growing inside Elara was part of a symbiotic intelligence, a living bridge between her species and his. It would not survive the journey home without careful attention, and the bond they shared was fragile, delicate, and essential. He felt a tug in his chest, a mixture of fear, wonder, and anticipation. He realized that he had a choice. He could leave this planet, return to humanity with proof of an alien species, and make a name for himself in the annals of science. Or he could stay, honor the bond he had formed, and commit himself to the nurturing of life that was far beyond anything he had known. Elara's hand pressed lightly against his, and he felt the pulse of her life and the life within. It was warm, steady, and insistent, a reminder that this was not just about him, or about her, or even about the planet. This bond was bigger than all of them. It was about connection, growth, and the potential to show humanity a different path, one built on empathy rather than conquest. He knelt beside her, closing his eyes, letting the energy flow through him. The hum of the valley rose, subtle at first, then stronger, echoing in harmony with the pulse he felt from Elara. The creatures of the forest gathered around, drawn by the energy, forming delicate patterns in the air that mirrored the rhythm of his thoughts. The planet was alive, aware, and responsive, and he could feel himself becoming part of it. When he opened his eyes, he saw that Elara was watching him with patience and understanding. He realized that the word yours, once a mystery, now carried the weight of responsibility. It was a call to partnership, to trust, to nurturing life beyond his own understanding. Elias felt a swell of emotion. He was humbled but also inspired. He could not turn away. The days that followed were filled with preparation. Elias learned to move in harmony with Elara, to anticipate the needs of the life she carried, and to support her in ways that were subtle yet profound. He observed how her energy influenced the environment, guiding plant growth, calming creatures, and maintaining the delicate balance of the ecosystem. Every gesture, every movement was a lesson in patience, empathy, and connection. One afternoon, they came across a grove where the crystals were arranged in natural spirals, like the patterns of DNA he had studied back on Earth. Elara knelt in the center and tapped her belly twice, her eyes locking onto his. Elias knelt beside her, sensing the life within responding to him, reaching out in ways that were almost tangible. It was as if it recognized him as part of its existence, and he felt a profound responsibility settle over him. He spoke softly, more to himself than to her. "I will do everything I can, I will be ready." She responded with a gentle tone, her skin glowing brighter, reflecting the affirmation and understanding they shared. The forest around them pulsed in response, and Elias felt a connection that was both intimate and universal. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the valley in shades of gold and lavender, Elias reflected on the choice before him. Returning to Earth with proof of Elara and her species would make him famous, perhaps even revered. But it would also risk breaking the bond they had formed, disrupting the life within her, and losing the opportunity to witness the full potential of this connection. Staying meant commitment, patience, and humility. It meant becoming part of something larger than himself, something alive, intelligent, and aware. He turned to Elara, who watched him with unwavering calm. Her eyes, filled with warmth and trust, seemed to ask him the question he had been avoiding. Will you choose the path of connection? Elias reached out, placing his hand near hers once more, and he felt the pulse of life affirming his choice. I will stay, he whispered, the words carrying weight and certainty. I will learn, I will understand, I will protect this life and all that it represents. Elara smiled, a soft, luminous smile that seemed to brighten the valley. She touched his hand lightly, a gesture of reassurance and shared commitment. The creatures of the forest gathered, moving in synchronized patterns that reflected the harmony of their decision. The crystals pulsed in waves of light, and the air vibrated with energy, as if the planet itself was acknowledging the choice they had made. In the following days, Elias dedicated himself fully to understanding the symbiotic intelligence within Elara. He observed how subtle gestures, energy shifts, and emotional states influenced the life she carried. He learned to anticipate her needs, to mirror her movements, and to offer support without words. The bond between them deepened, becoming a complex tapestry of shared awareness, mutual respect, and growing trust. He noticed small details he had never paid attention to before. The way the light shifted when she was calm, the gentle ripple in the air when she focused, the patterns the creatures formed when responding to her presence. Each observation revealed more about the intelligence of the life within her, and each revelation strengthened his commitment to their shared journey. One evening, as the twin moons rose high, casting silver light across the forest, Elara led him to a quiet clearing. The air was filled with a gentle hum, and the crystals glowed softly, reflecting the moon's light. She tapped her belly once, then placed her hand near his, the connection pulsing stronger than ever. Elias felt a profound sense of purpose, realizing that their bond was no longer just personal. It was a bridge between species, a symbol of what humanity could achieve when guided by empathy, trust, and understanding. He spoke softly. I understand now, the responsibility, the connection, everything. I am ready. She responded with a soft tone that resonated in his chest, affirming the depth of their partnership. The forest around them pulsed gently, the creatures moving in patterns that reflected the shared energy. Elias knew then that the days ahead would be challenging, filled with lessons and discoveries, but he was no longer uncertain. He was committed, fully present, and prepared to embrace the journey that awaited. As night fell, Elias sat beside Elara, feeling the warmth of her presence and the life she carried. The forest hummed softly, a living symphony that mirrored their connection. He understood now that the choice to stay was not just about the present, it was about the future, about nurturing life, understanding intelligence, and exploring the potential for harmony between species. And as he drifted into sleep beneath the glowing crystals, he felt a sense of peace unlike anything he had known. The word yours echoed softly in his mind, no longer a mystery but a promise, a responsibility and a path forward. Elias had made his choice. He would stay. He would learn. He would nurture the connection that bound him to Elara, to the life within her, and to the living planet that had brought them together. The days on Lyria 7 had grown longer, filled with a rhythm that Elias had come to cherish. He and Elara moved through the crystal forests together, exploring and learning, sharing gestures and glances that had become a language of their own. The life inside her had grown stronger, and its energy pulsed in harmony with hers, with the planet, and now with him. Each day, he felt the weight of responsibility and the wonder of discovery in equal measure. One morning, the forest shimmered with a light that felt almost like celebration. Tiny luminescent insects drifted in intricate patterns through the air, reflecting the glow of the crystals and the twin moons. Elara led Elias to a clearing where the ground seemed to pulse gently, as if in anticipation. She tapped her belly once, her eyes meeting his, and Elias felt the familiar surge of connection. The life she carried was aware of him, responding not just to his presence, but to his thoughts, his emotions, and his commitment. He knelt beside her, placing his hand near hers, careful not to break the delicate rhythm of energy flowing between them. He realized that the bond they shared was no longer simple. It was a living, evolving connection that included him fully. The life inside her was not just a being. It was a bridge, a symbol of a new possibility, a first step toward understanding the depth of connection that could exist between species. Elias had spent weeks learning, observing, and growing. He had seen how Elara's gestures could influence the forest, how her emotions could guide the creatures around her, and how the life within her responded to energy and thought. Now, he understood that the bond was mutual. The being growing inside her was shaping them as much as they were shaping it, and he felt honored to be part of it. As the day progressed, Elara guided him to a shallow pool surrounded by crystalline spires. The water shimmered with soft colors, reflecting the forest and the sky. She knelt at the edge, tapping her belly, then placing her hands on the water. The ripples formed patterns that Elias recognized from earlier observations, but now they seemed more complex, more intentional. It was as if the life within her was trying to communicate, to show them its awareness and intelligence. Elias knelt beside her, watching carefully. He extended a hand, almost instinctively, and felt the pulse of life resonate in response. The patterns in the water shifted, forming shapes that reflected the harmony of their bond. He realized that this being was not just a child of her species. It was a living symbol of connection, understanding, and empathy, a bridge between worlds. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, Elias felt a swell of anticipation. He knew that the moment they had been preparing for was near. The energy of the forest, the pulse of the crystals, and the rhythm of Elara's gestures all pointed toward the culmination of this extraordinary bond. He remained close, attentive, and respectful, allowing the life within her to guide them naturally. Finally, as twilight settled over the forest, a soft glow emerged from Elara's belly. It was gentle, almost shy, but unmistakable. Elias watched in awe as the light grew, forming a delicate shape suspended between them. The life within her was making itself known, connecting not just with Elara, but with him and the living planet around them. It pulsed softly, a rhythm in perfect harmony with the energy he felt flowing through the forest. Elias reached out carefully, feeling the pulse of life extend toward him. It was not just physical, it was emotional, intellectual, and profoundly alive. He sensed curiosity, recognition, and a quiet intelligence that seemed to mirror his own thoughts. The being was aware of him, aware of Elara, and aware of the world they shared. It was more than life. It was connection made tangible, a living proof of harmony across species. Elara looked at him, her eyes warm and bright, and tapped her belly again. Elias understood immediately. This was the moment they had been preparing for, the culmination of trust, patience, and empathy. He reached out gently, allowing the energy of the life within her to flow through his hands, connecting them all in a web of understanding. The forest around them seemed to respond, crystals pulsing, insects weaving patterns in the air, and even the gentle hum beneath their feet rising in a soft chorus. He spoke softly, almost to himself. "We will protect you. We will learn together." The words felt small against the enormity of what was happening, but he knew they carried sincerity, commitment, and hope. The being inside Elara pulsed in response, as if acknowledging his promise. The hours passed in quiet awe. Elias and Elara remained close, hands near, sharing the connection that now included the new life fully. He observed the way the forest responded, how the creatures moved with care and harmony, and how the energy around them seemed to grow richer, more intricate, more alive. He realized that this moment was not just personal, it was universal. It was proof that life could connect across boundaries, that empathy and trust could create bridges even between worlds. As night fell, the twin moons rose again, casting silver light across the forest. Elias and Elara moved slowly, deliberately through the forest, guided by the pulses of energy that flowed from her and the being within. Each step was measured, careful, respectful. He had learned patience, awareness, and the importance of harmony. The bond they shared was fragile but resilient, and he was committed to nurturing it. Days turned into weeks, and Elias witnessed the growth of the life within Elara. It responded to gestures, glances, and energy, learning and adapting in ways that fascinated him. He realized that this being would not just be a child or companion. It would be a teacher, a guide, and a bridge for humanity to understand the potential of empathy, trust, and cooperation. Elias spent hours observing, documenting, and interacting. He noticed subtle changes in the forest that reflected the bond. The way the crystals aligned themselves to patterns of energy, the way the insects danced in intricate formations, and the way the plants shifted subtly to mirror the life's rhythm. The planet itself seemed alive in response, participating in the nurturing process, and he felt honored to be part of it. One evening, Elara led him to a high plateau overlooking the valley, where the crystals glowed like stars. She tapped her belly, and Elias knelt beside her, feeling the pulse of life and energy that connected them all. The being inside her now seemed fully aware, its intelligence and presence undeniable. Elias felt a sense of awe that went beyond words. He whispered softly, "You are not alone, we are with you. Together we will learn, grow, and protect this world and all that it holds." The pulse of life responded, gentle yet insistent, as if confirming understanding. The forest around them shimmered in acknowledgement, and Elias felt a profound sense of purpose. Days later, as they moved through a grove of towering crystals, the being inside Elara made a subtle movement, a shimmer of light that mirrored his own pulse. He realized that it was capable of interaction, of recognition, of learning in ways that went beyond instinct. It was intelligence, curiosity, and consciousness, born from trust, empathy, and connection. Elias marveled at the potential this held for humanity. If humans could learn to approach the universe with the same care, patience, and empathy, they could forge connections that were harmonious rather than destructive. He understood that the life within Elara was a symbol, a living testament to what could be achieved when beings chose understanding over fear, connection over conquest. One morning, as the first light of dawn spilled across the crystal forest, Elias stood beside Elara, watching the life within shimmer and respond to the energy around it. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for her, for the planet, and for the opportunity to witness a bond that transcended species. He knew that their journey was just beginning, but he was ready. He was committed to nurturing, learning, and growing alongside them. The forest pulsed with life as he reached out and touched Elara's hand lightly. The being within responded immediately, its energy flowing through them in a harmony that filled him with wonder. He realized then that the word "yours" had been far more than a simple claim. It had been an invitation, a trust, and a shared destiny. Elias smiled softly, feeling the warmth of connection radiate through him. "I am yours," he whispered, not in possession, but in recognition of responsibility, trust, and partnership. The being pulsed in response, the forest shimmered, and Elara's eyes reflected the depth of understanding they shared. As the sun rose higher, illuminating the valley, Elias knew that humanity's first steps toward understanding another intelligent life form had begun. Not with words, not with instruments, but with empathy, patience, and a willingness to connect. He felt a deep sense of hope that one day, humans might approach the universe with the same care and respect that had allowed him to be part of this extraordinary bond. Together, Elias, Elara, and the life within her moved through the crystal forest, their steps slow, deliberate, and filled with purpose. They were a trio bound by trust, understanding, and shared destiny. The forest pulsed in harmony, the creatures danced in patterns of light, and the crystals shimmered with life. Elias understood now that the future was not about conquest or power. It was about connection, empathy, and nurturing the bonds that could carry life across worlds. And in that moment, as he gazed at Elara and the shimmering life she carried, Elias felt a profound certainty. Humanity had the potential to grow, to learn, and to embrace the universe with care. And through this bond, he would witness, protect, and nurture the first living bridge between species, the first symbol of a future built on understanding rather than fear. The twin moons rose high above the crystal forest, their silver light bathing the trio in a gentle glow. Elias knelt beside Elara, feeling the pulse of life between them, the rhythm of the planet, and the harmony that now connected all of them. He smiled, knowing that the journey ahead would be long, filled with lessons and discoveries, but also filled with hope. For the first time, humanity's place in the universe seemed not distant or uncertain, but part of a living, breathing connection. A bond built on trust, empathy, and the simple, profound understanding that life, in all its forms, was meant to be shared, nurtured, and celebrated.